Okay, thanks for the introduction. I'm Wang, who represents the authors to present their work, DShield. And GNN neural networks gained a lot of attention in recent years, and many types of data can be represented as graph structure, like social network or protein molecules. And GNN spread information across graph structures. This makes them to capture complex relationships between nodes and edges easily. And because of this, GNN has been deployed in many real-world applications for node classification, graph classification, and link prediction. However, backdoor attacks emerged as a major threat to GNN-based applications, and these attacks manipulate the model's behavior by injecting hidden triggers into the clean graph, making the model output incorrect predictions. And we can categorize these attacks into two types. And for the dirty label backdoor attacks manipulate changes the graph data and alter label information of certain nodes. And this forces the model to associate injected triggers with a specific target label when training. And in contrast, clean label backdoor attacks only alter attributes over normal nodes, and this makes the model focus more on the injected altered attributes when classifying nodes with the target label. And here is an example. You can see that the attacker selects 2 point nodes and inject triggers. And for the dirty label attack, the nodes are retained their original labels, but in clean label attacks, these nodes are assigned to target label. So this makes it blend in more natural. And to mitigate such attacks, we focus on identifying pointed nodes that contain injected triggers. And our evaluation reveals 2 key phenomena: and semantic drift over dirty label attack and attribute overemphasize over clean label attack. And its first rule of this figure is TSNE realization of latent representation from the model trained backdoor model trained using supervised learning. And you can see that the pointed nodes are clustered near the target label. And this indicates that both dirty and clean label attacks successfully mislead the model. And in the second row, its left part is TSNE, also TSNE visualization, but from a model trained without label information using self-supervised learning. And now the pointed nodes are no longer clustered near the target label. And this reveals that dirty label attack causes semantic drift, as the injected trigger alters the semantic meaning of pointed nodes. And in the right side is TSNE visualization or attribute importance similarity. And we use gradient analysis to measure how many attributes influence the model's prediction. And here you can see that the pointed nodes have a highly similar important attribute. And this reveals that clean label attacks make the model excessively focuses on these altered specific attributes when classifying. And based on these findings, we proposed DShield, which consists of 3 key modules: a shadow model training, train the backdoor and self-supervised model to identify pointed nodes in dirty label attacks. And discrepancy matrix construction detects pointed nodes in both dirty and clean label attacks. And backdoor free model training train a model that is free from backdoor vulnerabilities. And in a shadow model training, we train 2 models. The backdoor model is trained using manipulated label information, which makes it valuable to backdoor attacks. And the self-supervised model is trained with a constructive learning framework, which learns the natural structure of the graph. And the learning process includes 3 steps. In step 1, augmentation, we augmented the graph using 2 statistical transformation functions. And in view encoding, we extract latent representation of the nodes for the 2 augmented graphs. And in contrast and reconstruction, we use positive and negative sample pair to help the model to distinguish similar and dissimilar nodes. And the entire learning process makes the model to learn a robust graph representation. In more detail, in view augmentation, we augmented the graph into level, structure, and attribute levels. And these augmentations leverage the similarity of attributes within connected edges and the importance of attributes in the prediction. And using this information, we selectively mask edges and attributes. Then in view encoding, we generate node embeddings using encoder model. And finally, in contrast and reconstruction, beyond the conventional constructive learning loss function, we introduce representation augmentation and reconstruction loss to reduce false negatives. And this enhances the connection between the attributes and their representations. And to identify pointed nodes, we construct two discrepancy matrices. For semantic discrepancy matrices, we first obtain latent representation of nodes from the both backdoor and self-supervised model. And next, we build semantic matrices for these representations. And finally, we focus on these nodes that have significantly higher distance in the self-supervised model than its distance in the backdoor model. And in attribute importance discrepancy matrices, we analyze the importance of attribute dimensions using gradient-based methods. And because these attributes have many dimensions, so we use UMAP to reduce the dimensionality of these attributes and avoiding the curse of dimensionality. And finally, we fuse these two matrices and use HDB scan clustering method to identify pointed nodes. Once the pointed nodes identified, we move on to train battle-free model. And we divided the graph into two subgraphs. One contains all the identified pointed nodes, and the other contains the remaining nodes. And we then train a model that's maximizing the classification loss on the clean subgraph, or minimizing the classification loss on the clean subgraph, while maximizing classification loss on the pointed subgraph. After training, we compute a mean distance between the latent representation of nodes in both subgraphs. And we finally use median absolute deviation to identify pointed labels and use these pointed labels to separate pointed nodes. So here are the analysis of the elements of discrepancy matrices. And the figures A to D is about semantic discrepancy matrices, and the other two figures is about the attribute importance discrepancy matrices. And you can see a clear gap between normal and malicious nodes. And it proves that our algorithm can effectively distinguish these two types of nodes. And for effectiveness evaluation, we test our algorithm against 7 dirty label attacks on 4 data sets. And similarly, we also tested it against 2 clean label attacks and on the same 4 data sets. And the results show that DShield exhibits a notable performance against most backdoor attacks, surpassing the efficacy of conventional defenses. And you may notice there is a slight decline in model performance on normal nodes. And this is because we introduced an additional filtering process to filter out malicious nodes. And for robustness evaluation, we test the algorithm on different poisoning rates, different trigger rates, and different adaptive attacks. And it shows that the efficacy of DShield stems from the execution of the self-supervised learning framework and the UMAP on the manipulated graph. And we also test the sensitivity of hyperparameters. And the parameter beta significantly affects identification precision, and the parameter gamma results in a decline in the victim model's performance on pointed nodes. And finally, we extend our algorithm to graph classification tasks. And the results show that the semantic drift and attribute overemphasize also occur in graph classification tasks. And this means DShield can be extended to other tasks beyond the node classification. And that's it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the authors. Thank you.